Let's talk about one of the most famous trials in all of history. A 70-year-old philosopher is on trial for his life, facing the death penalty. But his defense, it wasn't just about saving his own skin. It turned into this timeless lesson on integrity, on what it really means to be a good citizen. And, that lesson is just as powerful for us today. So let me ask you something right up front, because this gets to the absolute heart of the whole story. Would you die for an idea, for a principle you believe in? For Socrates, this wasn't some abstract thought experiment. This was the very real choice he had to make, standing right there in that courtroom. Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 399 BC. We're in an Athenian court, and the philosopher Socrates is on trial for his life. And from his very first words, he draws a sharp, clear line in the sand between himself and his accusers. Right out of the gate, Socrates frames the central conflict here. He says his accusers have used all this beautiful, persuasive language, and it's all lies. They are masters of rhetoric, but he promises the court something totally different. He's basically saying, look, you're not getting some fancy, rehearsed speech from me. You're getting the plain, unvarnished truth. He even reminds the jury that he's over 70 years old, and he's a total stranger to the way people talk in court. He's not here to perform. He's just going to speak honestly, the same way he always has. So you have to wonder, right? How did this philosopher, a guy who valued simple truth over everything else, end up on trial for his life? Well, funnily enough, it all kicked off with a message from a god. A strange riddle from the most respected religious authority in the whole Greek world. And that riddle, it set him on his public mission. You see, his friend Chaerephon went to the famous Oracle at Delphi and asked a really simple question. Is anyone wiser than Socrates? And the oracle's answer was a hard no. When Socrates heard this, he was just stunned. He remembers thinking, I know that I have no wisdom. What on earth can the god mean by this? This one single puzzle basically launched his entire life's work. So if Socrates himself is saying, hey, I'm not wise, what in the world could the oracle have meant? Well, his quest to solve this divine riddle led him to this profound and kind of unexpected discovery about what wisdom even is.
It turns out, Socratic wisdom isn't about having all the answers or knowing a ton of facts. It's the exact opposite. It's about knowing the precise limits of your own knowledge. True wisdom, he realized, actually begins the moment you can admit you don't know. And this right here captures the core difference he found in people. While all the so-called wise men of Athens were running around pretending to have knowledge they didn't really have, Socrates had one tiny advantage. He was deeply, painfully aware of his own ignorance. He didn't fake it. So he went on this mission, what he jokingly called his Herculean labors. He went around and systematically questioned the supposed wise men of Athens, the politicians, the poets, the skilled craftsmen, and one by one, just by asking simple questions, he showed that their claims to wisdom were hollow. And as you can probably guess, this made him a lot of very, very powerful enemies. Okay, so that brings us right back to the courtroom. Now that he's explained why so many people have it in for him, Socrates turns his attention to the formal legal charges. And these were brought forward by his main accuser, a young guy named Miletus.
So the charges are pretty serious. There are two of them. First, that he's a corrupter of the youth. And second, that he's an atheist who's trying to introduce new gods. Socrates, true to form, just proceeds to dismantle both of these accusations with pure step-by-step logic.
On that first charge of corruption, his logic is just airtight. Think about it. He argues that nobody would willingly make their neighbors wicked, right? Because wicked people end up doing harm to those around them. So, therefore, if he is somehow corrupting the youth, it must be completely unintentional. And if it's unintentional, he says he needs to be educated, not punished in court. It's a brilliant logical trap.
And then there's the second charge of atheism. Here, Socrates points out this glaring contradiction in the accusation itself. The official charge sheet says he believes in new divinities or spiritual agencies. But Socrates asks, how can a person possibly believe in spiritual activities without believing in spirits? It's like believing in horse riding, but not believing in horses. The accusation literally cancels itself out.
So after he's taken apart the formal charges, Socrates moves on to the real heart of his defense, and really the core of our whole discussion here. He's about to completely redefine what a citizen's duty truly is, and he places his divine mission above everything else, above the state, above his reputation, and yes, even above his fear of death.
And there it is, his ultimate declaration. He tells the men of Athens, his jury, that that he honors them and loves them. But his first and foremost obligation is to the divine command to live as a philosopher. This is a truly radical and pretty dangerous redefinition of what civic duty and morality are all about.
To help them understand this, he compares himself to Achilles, the greatest Greek hero. Achilles chose to face certain death to avenge his friend rather than live a long life in shame. Well, in that same spirit, Socrates argues that the only thing a good person should ever truly fear is not death, but committing an injustice or abandoning their post. That is the only real disgrace.
And he's not just talking hypothetically here. He says, I've got the receipts. He gives them two concrete examples from his own life. When Athens was a democracy, he was the only public official who stood up against an illegal mass trial. Later, when the city was ruled by the brutal 30 tyrants, he flat out defied a direct order to arrest an innocent man, an act that could have easily gotten him killed. His commitment to justice over unjust orders is a matter of public record.
So you might be wondering, well, if he cared so much about justice, why wasn't he a politician? He actually has an answer for that. He says a divine voice, a sort of sign he's had since he was a child, always warned him away from public life. He was absolutely convinced that a truly honest person who tries to fight the state's injustices from the inside would be destroyed long before they could ever do any real good.
So, despite this incredibly powerful defense, the jury finds him guilty. And now, as he faces his sentence, Socrates gives his final thoughts. He puts a crystal clear choice in front of them, making it obvious that the health of his soul is far, far more important to him than the survival of his body. And this really is the fundamental conflict he's been trying to get people to see his entire life. He's begged his fellow citizens to stop obsessing over money, honor, and reputation, and to start caring for the things that actually matter: wisdom, truth, and the overall improvement of their own souls. After the jury sentences him to die, he delivers this just profound insight. He says that he, being old and slow, has been caught by death. But his accusers, being quick and clever, they've been caught by something much faster and much more terrible: unrighteousness or injustice. The real tragedy, he tells them, isn't dying, it's living an unjust life.
And here, he delivers his most famous line of all. He tells the jury that if they were to offer to let him go, but only on the condition that he stops practicing philosophy, he would refuse. Because the greatest good for any human being is to spend every single day questioning themselves and others about virtue. To stop doing that would be a betrayal of his divine mission. A life without that kind of constant self-examination, he concludes, is simply not worth living.
Socrates' story, it really forces us to look in the mirror. He chose his mission, his duty, over his own survival, because he was convinced that a life without integrity is no life at all. And that leaves all of us with a question to take away from this. What is the one principle that you would refuse to sacrifice no matter what?